cold stone pressed against her knees. The date was May 19th, 1536. The scaffold on Tower Green was an unfamiliar sight, newly constructed just for her. The truth of what occurred at Anne Boleyn's execution does not begin with a panicked queen. It begins with a chilling, calculated precision. She was anticipating the heavy, clumsy English axe. But Henry VIII had paid for something different. He imported a specialist from Calais, a man who carried a tool of lethal elegance, a heavy, double-edged sword. This blade is the central mystery. This execution was a performance, but the audience was small, and the stage was rigidly controlled. Why the imported sword? And what final secret was she forced to take to the grave? The blade was meant for silence, not just death. If you enjoy these dark histories, leave a like and subscribe and comment below where you're listening from. And now, back to the story. The verdict was a formality: treason. The sentence? To be burned alive or beheaded at the king's pleasure. She was no longer queen. She was led from Westminster Hall, stripped of her crown and her dignity, but not her composure. The return to the Tower of London on May 15, 1536, was a formal degradation. She was not returned to the royal apartments she had prepared for her coronation. She was taken to the colder, darker Queen's Lodgings, now a state prison. The world shrank to the dimensions of a single room. The sounds were stone, iron, and the muffled announcements of the guards. The damp of the Thames seeped through the walls. She was now simply the Lady Anne Boleyn. The institution had renamed her. Her identity was being systematically erased before her body. Her every meal, every visitor, every piece of correspondence was monitored by her keeper, Sir William Kingston. He reported her lightness and hysteria, but this may have been his own interpretation. What the records do show is a quiet, disturbing will. She did not rave for mercy. Her resistance was in her poise. She worried for the souls of the 5 men, including her own brother, condemned with her. She demanded to receive the sacrament in the Tower's chapel, forcing the institution to acknowledge her soul, even as they prepared to destroy her body. This unnerving calm was a problem. A hysterical traitor was manageable. A composed martyr was dangerous. Then the mercy arrived. Word came from Thomas Cromwell. The king, in his compassion, would spare her the fire. She would be beheaded, and further, she would be spared the crude, often clumsy, English axe. Henry was arranging for a specialist, an executioner from Calais who used a sword. This was the offer. The price was simple, unspoken, and absolute. She must die well. She must not protest her innocence too loudly on the scaffold. She must not challenge the king's justice. She was to be a silent, dignified spectacle. The sword was not a kindness. It was a tool to ensure her final cooperation. She famously joked to Kingston, "I hear say the executioner is very good, and I have a little neck." It was a flash of dark humor, but also a signal. She understood the transaction. Her final resistance would not be a plea for life, but a performance of innocence so perfect it would haunt the king who demanded it. But the price of that silence was higher than anyone knew. Her trial in Westminster Hall was theater. The real test of faith happened in the damp silence of the Tower. The condition was never spoken, but it hung in the air like wax smoke. Thomas Cromwell, the king's architect, needed more than her death. He needed her confession. A full confession to adultery, incest, and treason would validate the king's brutal, hasty decision. It would secure the new queen, Jane Seymour, whose betrothal to the king was arranged while Anne was still alive. It would erase any doubt. The mercy of the sword was the velvet glove. The iron fist was the alternative, the fire. Or perhaps worse, the complete and total disgrace of her daughter, Elizabeth, forever branded a bastard with no hope of restoration. The pressure was relentless. Her own chaplain, Matthew Parker, was present. Her ladies-in-waiting, chosen specifically by Cromwell, watched her every move, straining for a whisper of guilt they could report. They offered her the sacrament, urging her to unburden her soul, to make a good death. This was the soft pressure, confessed to God, and by extension, to the king's men. Her refusal was not a grand speech. It was a cold, precise statement. To Archbishop Cranmer, who had visited hoping for a compromise, she maintained her innocence. To her jailer, Sir William Kingston, She obsessed over the souls of the innocent men condemned with her, particularly her brother, but she did not add her own name to the list of sinners. The soft pressure failed. The escalation began. The world was reduced to her lodgings. The muffled thud of hammers drifted from Tower Green, the sound of her own scaffold being built. This was deprivation, not of food, but of hope. They denied her access to her daughter. They left her alone with the terror of the blade, hoping the silence and the cold would crack her resolve. But what was meant to break her became her armor. The silence they imposed, she perfected. The dignity they demanded for their public performance, she adopted as her own defiance. She would not give Henry the satisfaction of a broken, weeping traitor. She would not give Cromwell the lie he needed to legitimize his plot. Her religious faith, which they tried to use as a lever, became her shield. Her discipline, learned over years as a courtier and queen, was now her final weapon. The king demanded a confession, but he would receive a reckoning. This resolves the core why. Henry VIII, a man consumed by the need for a male heir and by his own towering ego, could not simply discard a queen. He had to destroy her, to make her monstrous. The charges were a political necessity. The execution was a personal one. And the price? The price of the Calais Sword was Anne's cooperation in her own character assassination. It was a tool of psychological control. An axe was crude. It could take multiple blows. A victim might scream or resist or be pitied. A sword was clean, fast, and required the victim's participation. She had to kneel upright, exposing her little neck. It was the professional tool for a professional death, ensuring the king's narrative was the final one. By refusing to confess, she denied them their ultimate victory. She accepted the sword, but she refused the lie. She would walk to that scaffold not as a common criminal, but as a sovereign, turning her execution into her coronation as a martyr. The blade was sharp, but her conscience was sharper. The sun was high by 8 a.m. The fog had burned off the river. The small, curated crowd of about 1,000 merchants, aldermen, and council members was silent. This was not a public spectacle for the masses. This was an invitation-only purging. She walked from the Queen's lodgings to the scaffold, her composure absolute. She was dressed in dark gray damask, trimmed with ermine. This was not the costume of a penitent. It was the uniform of a queen. She climbed the steps and saw the executioner, a man whose name is lost to history, standing not with an axe, but with the heavy polished sword. This was the tool she had joked about. Now it was a cold reality. Her ladies removed her ermine mantle. She then performed a final wordless rite of memory. She did not weep or faint. She carefully removed her fashionable English hood, revealing her hair, which she tucked precisely under a simple linen coif. This was her action. She was making herself ready. She was controlling the final moment, denying the executioner any struggle, denying the king his spectacle of a broken woman. She made her final speech, a masterpiece of ambiguity, praising the king's kindness without admitting her own guilt. She asked for prayers. Then she knelt, upright as the sword required, repeating, "To Jesus Christ, I commend my soul." Why did she seem so unafraid of the blade? The hidden truth is found in the margins, in the accounts written by those who watched. A letter from a Portuguese witness, dispatched that same day, describes the event. Other sources corroborate the chilling detail. She was composed, yes, but she was still human. She was braced for the blow. The executioner, seeing her poise, worried she might flinch and ruin the single clean stroke Henry had demanded. So he employed a final, calculated deception. He shouted, "Bring me the sword!" Or, by some accounts, "Boy, bring me the sword." It was a trick. The sword was already in his hand. Anne, hearing the shout, instinctively turned her head slightly to look for the blade that was meant to be seconds away. In that precise, unguarded moment of distraction, he struck. The heavy Calais steel took her head in a single, silent motion. The secret she took to the grave was not a plot. The hidden truth was the final betrayal. The mercy of the sword was a lie, fulfilled by a different kind of precision. The precision of a stage magician, a final cold violation to ensure the blade found its mark. Her body and head were taken not in a royal casket, but to an old arrow chest from the Tower Armory. The blade was precise, but the methods were cruel. They did not give her a coffin. Her ladies-in-waiting, left alone on the scaffold, had to find an old arrow chest from the Tower Armory. They lifted her head and body, wrapped them in linen, and placed them inside the rough wooden box. She was carried to the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula within the tower's walls and buried under the stone floor in an unmarked grave next to the body of her brother. The erasure was immediate. The state machine, which had been so precise in her killing, was just as precise in her unmaking. At Hampton Court Palace, stonemasons were given their orders. They took chisels and hammers to the walls, chipping away her royal cipher. The intertwined letters H and A were scraped from the stone and wood. Her personal badge, the White Falcon, was torn down and replaced by the panther of the new queen, Jane Seymour. Scribes in Cromwell's service found their ink withheld for any entry that might flatter her memory. Her marriage was not just ended, it was declared void from the start. Officially, she had never been queen at all. The whispers survived. The Portuguese merchant sent his letter, his account of the executioner's trick sealed in wax and sent abroad. The French poet Lancelot de Carle published a poem detailing the martyrdom. But these were just whispers from a distance, not proofs. The official record was the scrape of the chisel, the blank page, the unmarked grave. We are left back on the scaffold, May 19th, 1536, the cold stone pressing against her knees. We are left with the chilling, calculated precision. The sword was only the tool. The true execution was the silence that followed, a void crafted by a king to erase a woman who had changed history, leaving only an echo, a warning, and a name that would not be forgotten. Subscribe, hit the bell, and like. Stone, once carved, always holds a memory.